Welcome to those who have joined us on the panel for Innovation Under Changing Climate, Innovating Options for a More Regenerative Agriculture. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I am Kelly Wachowski, leader of Climate Action and Agricultural Sustainability at IICA, the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation in Agriculture, specializing in providing technical assistance for a more resilient, inclusive, competitive agricultural sector, as well as more sustainability for agriculture in the Americas. This panel is being organized under the Norman E. Borlaug International Dialogue, bringing together people from over 65 countries to discuss matters related to food security and nutritional security worldwide, and the transformative solutions that ensure a more equitable food system that is also more sustainable and nutritious. There's no secret that there's more and more challenges for agriculture: inequality, poverty, food security, climate change, and the loss of biodiversity. We also know that continuing improving sustainability of our agri-food systems is essential to ensure we meet the Sustainable Development Goals and the objectives for biodiversity and for food security, and to avoid degradation of soils. One of the proposed solutions is regenerative agriculture, which is a systemic approach looking for positive results for climate, soils, biodiversity, and human beings to regenerate the environmental, productive, and socioeconomic aspects in the system. A series of practices that are linked to it in the past years have brought attention to the topic, and there's an increase in commitments to agriculture that is regenerative by countries and by the private sector. Therefore, I am very happy to moderate today's panel, where we have invited different stakeholders of the system, producer companies and international cooperation, as well as ministers and other government representatives, to talk about this topic. We will begin with some welcoming words by the Director General of IICA, Dr. Manuel Otero, a veterinarian that has become a visionary of agricultural policy for the whole continent, trying to face the biggest challenges we have in the worldwide agenda. Director General, you have the floor. Thank you very much, Kelly, for your kind words. I also want to greet everyone. Good morning, all those who are joining us. It's truly a pleasure to begin this panel, which I am sure will cover one of the most important topics for the transformation of our agri-food systems, which is the role of innovation to ensure we have an agriculture that becomes more regenerative. To begin, I would like to acknowledge that the World Food Price Organization is a strategic partner of IICA's to promote food security and sustainable agriculture based on innovation. And that alliance, I should say, is also linked to the 4 strategic principles that we always repeat at IICA. First of all, our agri-food systems are not failed systems. They, of course, can be improved, but they have not failed us. Secondly, that farmers have to be central. They have to be the main actors in these change processes. They deserve a leading role. Third, that only with science and innovation will we define a new generation of public policies. And as a corollary to that, the 4th pillar is that agriculture is necessarily part of the solution. In this panel, I echo Kelly's words, signaling out that we have important partners from the public and private sectors, all of them who are active in our hemispheric program of live soils in the Americas. IICA is a co-leader along with Dr. Ratan Lal, professor of Ohio State University, who's also a goodwill ambassador of IICA, and today once again honors us with his presence. And I'd also like to say that As Director General from AICA, here we all have the commitment to continue strengthening and supporting the transformation of agri-food systems throughout the Americas, because our continent serves as guarantor for environmental and nutritional sustainability of the planet. That's not under discussion. Therefore, we need to continue working to promote sustainable intensification of the production with the challenge or threat of climate change. We have to change this threat through innovation into a series of opportunities. And that is our job. In this process, conservation and recovery of soils within the approach of One Health is fundamental to ensure that we can meet all the goals that we have for our population and to ensure we still have ecosystem services available and essential for life. When you ask yourself, what is regeneration? I would say regeneration is the act of repairing or replacing something that has been damaged, and because it did not work adequately, needs to be returned to its original state. Beyond any complexities that might also be a characteristic of regenerative agriculture, I think we can most easily say it is the adoption of good practices on behalf of farmers, producers, and many practices like these are already being implemented in the region, such as no-till crops, crop rotation, the integrated production methods, low carbon emission models for agriculture, systems that are agro and pastoral in nature. So we are on the right track, and evidently we need to continue investing. We need to have more and more professionalized farmers, better extension systems, innovation systems, of course. But as I said, we are on the right path. And we also have to highlight the importance for family farmers and those who live in the most vulnerable regions in the face of climate change, where regenerative agriculture has to serve as a mechanism that can help recover fertility of the soil, help us use water efficiently, and lead to less use of external input. At ICA, we are promoting a series of actions that are favorable to sustainable production, developing studies led by Dr. Ratan Lal and our technical teams, which show the technical capacities of our soils to act as carbon sinks. So we have to think and act strategically, always trying to develop the best public policies to mitigate GHG emissions, and at ICA by offering excellent technical cooperation to provide through our network of offices and experts. Likewise, we've always had high-level agendas with the countries and agricultural negotiators under the Framework Convention of the UN on Climate Change. These allow us to act strategically and collectively throughout the region. Another example I should mention is the Continental Alliance for Food Security and Sustainable Development, which was approved in the context of the recent ministerial summit held on October 3rd to 5th, and at AICA that helps us prepare a cooperation strategy that is multidimensional to promote sustainable development of agricultural and agri-food systems. All these actions under technical cooperation continue until December, when we will meet in the Pavilion of Sustainable Agriculture with its countries and strategic partners in the private sector. They will all be at the COP28 in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. ICA does not just maintain and promote dialogue and collective action at the highest level, it also invests in translating knowledge into action on the field. as evident through several of our projects that focus on fundamental complementary areas, such as nature-based solutions, solutions based on soil, water, bioeconomy, food security, digital agriculture, family agriculture, gender, and youth. With that, I close to invite you all and to continue working together towards a strengthened vision of agriculture as part of the solution to the climate crisis, and farmers, as Norman Pollock has said, being a fundamental part of the process. Once again, I thank you all for being with us, and I give the floor back to Kelly. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. DG, for your message and for reminding us of the importance of producers within this fight and to boost innovation and resiliency in this changing climate and environment to face the impacts we are already experiencing. One of the reasons behind boosting regenerative agriculture has to do with its potential impact on mitigating climate change. So reducing emissions and how soils can capture carbon, and by fostering a massive scale of regenerative agriculture, we can have a significant impact and contribute to the goal of maintaining the rise of temperature under 1.5 degrees centigrade. And that's why we now have Dr. Ratan Lal, a visionary and soil expert who started working on this topic decades ago, particularly carbon in soils. He's a great promoter of regenerative agriculture, a great human being, and he also received the award for food and feeding the world in the past years. We will hear from him and other decision makers in the public sector, and then we will close with a panel from representatives of companies and international cooperation. Some of the Dr. Ratanlar, are the expectations of regenerative agriculture credible? What is your perspective on how to have greater food security and resilience for climate through soils in the region and through regenerative agriculture?
Thank you, Kelly. Can you see my slides?
Yes.
Thank you. Dr. Otero, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it's really a great honor to be present today at the very important discussion that ICA is leading. And it is especially a privilege to be a very cooperative program that we have at Ohio State with ICA. And I am glad to share with you some ideas on, for example, how Living Soils of the America program and that we are doing together can be very important to keeping sustainable development goals on the track, especially goal number 2, and hunger, goal number 3, climate action, goal number 15, life on land, goal number 1, and poverty, goal number 3, good health, goal number 6, clean water, and of course, goal number 7, renewable energy. All of them directly and indirectly depend on soil health. Therefore, the importance of the program Living Soils of America, the LISA. If we manage soil and vegetation properly, then the technical potential of carbon sequestration in soils of the world as a whole is about 2.5 gigaton, billion ton of carbon per year in soils alone. Therefore, soil can sequester as much as 25% of the emission from fossil fuel. If we combine together soil and vegetation between 2020 and 2100, the technical potential of soils of the world is about 180 gigaton, and that of vegetation about 150. Together, 333 gigaton, leading to drawdown of the atmospheric CO2 of more than 155 parts per million, which means if we can find alternative to fossil fuel, land-based sink through projects such as LISM can keep global warming to within 2 degrees centigrade. It's still possible. Therefore, regenerative agriculture that Dr. Otero and Kelly and others have mentioned. It is a concept, it's an idea, it's a philosophy, it's an approach. It is not one practice. And this approach is inspired by eco-innovation. It's powered by non-carbon energy. It's driven by a circular economy and green infrastructure. And it's supported by the recarbonization of the terrestrial biosphere at the bedrock of sustainable development. Recarbonization of the terrestrial biosphere, putting carbon back in soil and vegetation through regenerative practices, such as by continuous soil cover, by no soil disturbance, by integrated nutrient management, by complex rotation system, restoring soil organic carbon content so that, as Dr. Otero said, we can produce more from less. And in this regard, carbon farming indicates that growing carbon in land is a crop, a new crop, a product, a commodity that can also bring income for the farmer. And this carbon farming has three concepts: that it can be bought and sold or paid ecosystem services, and it also includes all greenhouse gases, nitrous oxide, methane, carbon dioxide, all converted into CO2 equivalent in terms of carbon credit. And carbon credit means a certificate showing that a government or company has paid to have 1 metric ton of CO2 equivalent removed from the atmosphere and transferred into soil as soil organic carbon or soil inorganic carbon, and into vegetation as tree growth carbon, which has long mean residence time, which means it stays there for a longer period of time. And Dr. Otero said translating science into action of LISOM is the major goal, and we can do that by promoting stewardship, economic incentives, and legal approaches. And briefly, I will talk about stewardship. Soil stewardship and care must be embedded in every fruit and vegetable eaten, in each grain ground into the bread consumed, in every cup of water used, in every breath of air inhaled, and in every scenic landscape cherished. And that is the mission of LISOM that ICA and Ohio State are putting it together. In terms of the economics, the 2010 prices, which I calculated and published, were about $130 per ton of carbon, which means per credit, it's about $35 per credit. And in 2023 prices, the value is $150 to $200 per ton of carbon, which translates into $40 to $54 per credit, or 1 metric ton of CO2. We also hope that through legislation, through policies, which are pro-agriculture, pro-nature, and pro-farmer, with the goal of no farmer left behind, we also consider rights of soil. What does that mean? Just as universal rights of human, rights of animal, there must also be rights of soil and rights of nature, and the essence of all life in the terrestrial biosphere. Soils have rights to be protected, restored, thrived, and managed judiciously. Prime agricultural land and ecologically sensitive ecoregion particularly must be protected and restored. And this is why the partnership between ICA and Ohio State is of critical importance in helping Latin American countries throughout America and hopefully in Africa, translating science into action. We also promote having Soil Health Act. This can be at a national level, it can be at eco-regional level, it can be at continental level. In the US, for example, we have a Clean Air Act of 1967, Clean Water Act of 1972. We are hoping, we promote, we aspire that we will have a Healthy Soil Act in the coming Farm Bill, hopefully in 2024. And what would that mean? It means it will encourage farmers and private sector to work together. And many of our colleagues are from private sector. We are working with Syngenta, PepsiCo, and many others, can play a critical role by working with policymakers, by academic organization, international organizations such as ICA, and of course the land manager to help promote science into action. ICA put together a book, cartoon book for children called Agreement, which was a step in the right direction. Hopefully we could make educational tool for children, primary and secondary school, which are also videos perhaps. This is a cartoon, which is a great start, and we can probably build upon this. Therefore, in the final and my last slide, I like to emphasize the need for a paradigm shift. What do I mean by this? To answer the question, what would I suggest to make agriculture a solution to environmental issues? The logical response would be to objectively and critically consider how do we produce, transport, process, cook, consume, and dispose of the waste. Number two, a prudent strategy would imply making soil, water, and agriculture an integral part of the solution, and empowering farmers, especially the women farmers and land manager, to produce more and more from less and less by reducing waste, enhancing the eco-efficiency, restoring degraded soil, afforesting the denuded land, and saving soil and water for nature. It would be impossible to keep global temperatures at safe levels unless there is a radical transformation in the ways by which we humans produce and consume our food and manage the earth's soil and water resources. This is where license project of ICA and Ohio State is very critically important. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lal, por esa intervención tan contundente que destaca.
Thank you for your great presentation, highlighting the need for a paradigm shift in the sector towards more regenerative agriculture, as well as the need to have rights of the soil and to ensure we have a mechanism that helps us foster the concept of regenerative agriculture to ensure farmers have the resources to make the productive changes and to be able to capture carbon. Now we have a segment that will see us hear from high representatives of the public sector on the matter. We will begin with the Minister of Agriculture from Guyana, Mr. Mustafa Zulkifar Mustafa, who started in agriculture his career representing farmers in a union of agricultural workers in Guyana, and then he has been a member of parliament for many years. And we also have from the Secretariat of Innovation, Sustainable Development, Irrigation and Cooperatives from Brazil, Ms. Renata Miranda, who has worked in transnational companies. Since 2008, she has worked in different positions in Embrapa. She's also a member of several committees and cooperatives and the Secretariat of Development. We also have another member of this panel, Mr. Marcelo Brito, the Executive Secretary of the Consortium on the Legal Amazon region. He's worked in several areas as Commercial Director, Director of Sustainability, and Director General of important companies of the agribusiness sector in Brazil. I'd like to start by asking if regenerative agriculture is important in your country, and if so, why? What policies do you have to promote it? What types of support do you need from other sectors to move forward? So we will give you each 5 minutes, beginning with Minister Mustafa.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. First of all, let me recognize the Director General and also Dr. Ratan Lal. I will see him in Guyana shortly this week at our Agri-Investment Forum. First of all, I know the time is limited, and your question is very appropriate. Is regenerative agriculture important for our country? If so, why? First and foremost, let me emphasize the importance of agriculture in Guyana. Agriculture is the backbone of our economy, providing livelihoods for a significant portion of our population and contributing 28.4% to our non-oil GDP in 2022. Agriculture sustains our people and nourishes our nation. In the face of environmental and marketing challenges, regenerative agriculture is equally important because it supports the sustainability, resilience, and productivity of Guyana's agriculture sector. It helps to address environmental challenges, strengthen food security, and support the economic well-being of the population. Guyana, with its agriculture dominance and that posed to be the food hub of CARICOM, has much to gain from embracing regenerative practices that promote both environmental and economic sustainability. In recent years, we have faced various challenges, floods, and now we are in the midst of the El Nino condition that have necessitated a shift towards more sustainable practices. Climate change has disrupted traditional farming practices, making it imperative that we adapt and mitigate the impact of climate change through regenerative agriculture. Your other question is, what policy do you have to help promote it? And what support do you need from other actors to move forward and scale up? To promote regenerative agriculture as its top priority, Guyana's Ministry of Agriculture has been promoting climate-smart agriculture practices amongst farmers, conducting climate-smart capacity-building exercises among agriculture officers, and investing in climate-resilience infrastructure, such as drainage and irrigation structures and shade house technology for cultivation. We have been promoting crop diversification by reducing dependency on a limited number of crops. The country aimed to enhance food security and adapt to changing climatic conditions. With these conditions that we are faced with and these challenges that we are facing, Guyana and also the rest of the region, the entire CARICOM region, have reiterated its commitment to reduce the food import bill. And that is why I just mentioned and highlighted that we have already targeted a number of those crops so that we can reduce the food import bill and also produce sufficient enough food for the entire Caribbean. We have seen crisis after crisis. We have seen, first of all, the pandemic that has put a shortage of food supply around the world. We have seen the crisis that have started with the Russian-Ukraine war, and government had to ensure that we arrest that situation, make input more appropriate to the farmers in our country. We have been by reducing dependency on those crops, we will ensure that we be self-sufficient to go into those crops that we have started, new crops, things like corn and soya that we have a large import bill on. So these issues that we have been dealing with over the last few years are issues that are real today for the food sector. Also, we have begun the cultivation of new crops, corn and soybeans. We have also begun conducting wheat trial and shade house crop cultivation for crops like cauliflower, broccoli, carrots, and other high-value crops. The extension arm of our research institution, the National Agriculture Research and Extension Institute, promotes and assists farmers to practice composing and vermicomposing to help improve plant growth, yield, and the maintenance of soil fertility and crop yield. They have also been encouraging farmers to employ regenerative practices like cover crop usage, intercropping, crop rotation, and mulching. Guyana's low-carbon development strategy is designed to guide our adaptation and mitigation efforts in the face of climate change, with carbon markets being a priority. Guyana is the first country to receive a certification of more than 33 million carbon credits by architecture of our REDD+ transaction. And here, Dr. Ratan Lal's topic is very, very important. I want to commend him for his passionate plea that we must also compensate farmers for their input in relation to soil in different parts of the world, especially areas that are prone to disaster. Guyana is fully committed to promoting regenerative agriculture as a means to address the challenges posed by climate change, improve food security, and create a sustainable future for our nation. One key area that the government of Guyana, through the Ministry of Agriculture, is seeking to develop is well-adapted risk transfer products, such as parametrics agricultural insurance. Through the guidance of the Special Ministerial Task Force, work is being done to have parametrics agricultural insurance implemented in CARICOM region, given the high vulnerability to climate change. We will require support from our partners like ICA in the form of technical assistance, capacity building, and financial assistance for us to improve and scale up our current efforts in promoting regenerative agriculture and explore how farmers can also participate in and take advantage of carbon markets. As we move forward, let us all work hand in hand as a global community to support and promote regenerative agriculture, for it is not just a perspective, but a promise of hope for a better, greener, and more resilient world. I want to commend the work of ICA and other organizations to help promote this form of agriculture, and I hope that all of us can promote it and make a difference in the world. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Minister Mustafa. You certainly make a strong case with crisis.
Gracias, señor ministro.
Me gustaría pasar ahora la palabra a la Secretaría.
I will now offer the floor to Secretary Miranda. Can you hear me clearly? It is a pleasure to greet you all, particularly my dear friend Manuel Otero. Congratulations. This is a very important subject matter to discuss. Allow me to state my admiration and my love for our dear friend Ratan Lal for his legacy, my greetings, and my dear friend Jorge Vertin, whom I greet, as well as all others that are in the meeting room here with us. I cannot go without greeting those that represent the rural workers, women particularly. It is important to have them. We will hear them later, but I would like to greet through them all the people in the rural areas. On behalf of our minister who was unable to join us, I would like to share these greetings and appreciation for the opportunity given to us. Allow me to take advantage of these moments to think out loud about regenerative agriculture. When we were talking, or when we were saying, or when we find a new name, well, and we see a transformation in agriculture, but we have to stop and think again of what that concept means. How is it that we carry this public policy and transformation into the future? How can we implement it? Here at the Ministry of Agriculture, we insist that our major commitment is food production to ensure food security amidst climate change. So that means recognizing that food security is a pillar in order to build economic strength. When you have food security, then you can assure many other things, less violence, you overcome internal issues on education and health. So food security is a structural pillar that covers many other priorities. So to talk about regenerative agriculture is to talk about that commitment. It should be a pillar we should not ignore. And I highlight this because when we talk about climate change and innovation and food security, we have seen the impact that climate change has caused. We have been losing sight of how climate change affects us. So here at the Ministry of Agriculture, our mission is precisely that technological transformation of conventional agriculture into sustainable regenerative agriculture, but with that perspective, focusing on the fact that food security is number one, and that transformation has to come from an ever more regenerative, more sustainable, more resilient agriculture. And that transformation should have the least impact possible on climate change. But it is fundamental for us to see our ability. We always need to, we always wonder, how can I scale this up? How can I incorporate innovation so that transition from conventional agriculture to regenerable or sustainable agriculture can be seen? How can it be seen? Oh, let's see, that could have a faster impact or more accelerated impact. As any public policy, well, we have to avoid risk and capture opportunities, and these must be viable, economically viable projects. So with this concern for the viability of public policy implementation, our ministry has developed a series of public policies that bring in together all the elements in regenerative agriculture. As you well know, for example, well, the main strategy we have is the low carbon agriculture, a sectoral plan to mitigate through agriculture, bringing economic benefit, and through resilient and mitigation efforts. So when we come in with a public policy, we want to see how this can be sustained. For example, we have the opportunity of reducing production cost, increase productivity, and producers then adopt that plan because it is an economic opportunity and has other benefits integrated in it. Logically, we have to think of policies that can be fostered at the public level. We have credits, we have insurance, technical assistance. A big program we also have that came into agriculture is the National Inputs or Bio-Inputs Program. It helps overcome actual risks. It helps reduce reliance on chemical products and also brings benefits to producers, and it gives an opportunity or creates opportunities, gives greater autonomy to producers, improves soil quality, its connection to the ecosystem. So it is much more sustainable. Another program we have, which will soon be launched, we are waiting for it, is the greenest carbon. This will respond to a question that many people posed before, and that is we can have agriculture connected to social practices. So we were using direct planting or direct seeding, recovery of degraded pasture lands, but we had not yet quantified, although we already knew how much soy was produced, for example, using sustainable technology. How much were we producing in maize or corn or beef? So this greener carbon attributes to the product, to the technologies used. And these are adaptive and mitigative. And with this, we overcome a serious problem, and we add value and we accelerate technology, because once I can incorporate the product and I give it a value and I take it to the market, well, then I take that differential price and I create opportunities with that, not only to address more demanding markets, but as Professor Lal said, also we can reach carbon markets. And we have other structural products, sustainable projects. We have a rural program much more connected with digital agriculture, innovation, ecosystems, and we take information where the growers are. We have several projects to reduce risk. We foster cooperativism, policies to add value. These are all necessary policies, but I would like to leave a question with you. And Professor, maybe you can help me respond this, because all policies help technological transfer. which is what we want. This is a new model to ensure food security with all those increases and resilience and overcoming trade barriers, et cetera, yes. But coming back to the matter of accelerating our technological transition, that obviously has an operating cost, the cost of public policy, and obviously that will take time. If we wanted to overcome all those time and budget challenges, we have the difficulty of paying for that transition. So my question is for the professor, because he mentioned the possibility of even paying for the soil, the value of the soil used in the agri-food system. Do you think our society is prepared to add this technological transition value? I know we have that willingness, that desire. We want to have this technological transition in the house, but it must be structural. We have seen the value of food security and have the funding mechanisms that are so many, in fact, the carbon market, services, and all of this. So what are the challenges and benefits if we could make viable the implementation of these policies and moving into this field where we need? Thank you for your patience and opportunity. Thank you very much, Secretary, for your comments that reflected the need to not only have one policy, but a group of integral policies to create this enabling environment that facilitates the implementation of a more regenerative agriculture and the need to not leave behind the productive and economic goals that exist in the sector, and how this has to be balanced at the social and environmental levels, as is done through the ABC plan. Dr. Lal, I will let you think about that question a while, that question from the Secretary a while. And now I will offer the floor to Marcelo Brito for him to tell us a bit from the perspective of the Amazon states. Good morning, good afternoon. I would like to thank ICA and on behalf of Jorge, our colleague who wasn't able to join us. We have a series of colleagues who are very grateful for this invitation. Yes, it is wonderful to be here speaking of something so important. I am the son. Well, my parents, my grandparents, all my whole family have been farmers. And I have visited many countries in the world, developing nations. But when we come to a debate like this, when we talk about the importance of public policies that Renata has shared with us, the importance of the words shared by the different speakers, this leads us to think of, for example, if our language has really been developed to sell ideas to producers, to farmers, because I know that modern regenerative agriculture that uses all technologies is basically aimed at producers. Agriculture for small producers. Well, they do not necessarily have access to that technology, all that jargon. Here in Brazil, more than 80% of the agriculture producers do not have the slightest idea of what the carbon market is all about. In Africa and Asia and Latin America, the same applies. There is no understanding about that. So we see we see that they do not understand exactly what climate change is all about. They can feel the effects of it only. So we need to have better wording to really reach them so that they can better understand it. This is very important in agriculture. So I have to see what the farmers have to see what everybody else is doing and gradually learn from that. Technical assistance from the more developed countries has not really helped very much or as much as expected. None of the two sides of the story expected such little progress. Basically, the objective here is to we must focus on bringing the technology to the field, but expressing it in easy wording under conditions that the farmers, the rural farmers can really accept it and have access to it, knowledge-wise and technological-wise. This is our work. We have much more to discuss amongst ourselves, but my question is, how can we spread out these new technologies to the medium and small growers? That is not the reality in of 70% of the agricultural production in Brazil. Just imagine this is, we are such a large country, but most of our rural properties produce this 70% of where the 70% of our production originates. So we need to help these medium and small growers to understand. We need to make this, we need to socialize it and make it more affordable to them. And when we go to the climate summit, we should remember that agriculture, forests, and energy are very important principles to always bear in mind. Thank you very much. Thank you, Marcelo, for this urge to be inclusive and to ensure we understand, we use wording that is acceptable and understood by small growers. Before changing the panel, I would like to see if Dr. Lal would like to respond to the question and regarding perhaps given the limited budget and limited timeline, how can we accelerate transition to a more technologically based agriculture? Thank you.
Kelly, yes, you are very right. She asked a very good question, very timely, very important question, and I commend you. We need policymakers like her who are innovative and who ask questions and ready to accept whatever can be done to promote adoption of improved practices. Number one thing is that we must make sure that our farmers, they recognize that we consider, the society considers that they are the best steward of natural resources, because they have to believe that society gives them the due respect for their ability to protect, manage, sustain for generations to come natural resources. So respectability of the farming profession is very critical, absolutely critical. I'm not sure that the farmers are given due respect in every society that they deserve, compared with other professions. And yet their profession is the one from which food, nutrition, quality of the environment, the landscape, everything comes from. So that is one part. To promote that, I would suggest not only just science, not only just policy, but we also bring in the religious leaders. Every religion, whether it's Judaism, whether it's Christianity, whether it's Islam, whether it's Hinduism, whether it's Buddhism. In fact, I have a table. When I come to Guyana, I'll present that table. How each religion gives us the guidelines how to protect. Quran says, do not waste water, even if you live on a running river. Very important part. And who is going to implement that? Farmers. So let's bring in the religion. Pope Francis does a very good job. He says many times I heard, I am disappointed with what is happening in my home continent in terms of the degradation and deforestation. Education is another part. In all level of education, from kindergarten up to high school and college, environment protection and management should be an integral part of the curriculum. All these things will require time, patience, but I think the transformation will happen. And giving the respect to the farming profession will be the highest on my agenda to bring about that transformation. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias, Dr. Lal. Es súper importante asegurar.
Thank you, Dr. Lal. It is very important to ensure that we give producers the respect they owe. They deserve, excuse me. The question arises now. If we all agree that regenerative agriculture is a good idea, how do we do it? Well, there's a role for the public sector here, the private sector, for producers, for academic institutions, for organizations of producers and others. So how can we ensure, as Marcelo highlighted, that we are driving inclusive regenerative agriculture? To help us respond these questions, we have a panel now. First, I would like to thank Minister Mustafa, Secretary Miranda, and Mr. Brito for joining us to give the public sector perspective, the perspective of decision makers. Now, the next panel consists of different people that are working to implement regenerative agriculture with us. We have Elvia Monzon, a farmer, leader of rurality in Guatemala, who drives the women's presence in agriculture and helps lead she leads the Association of Coffee Growers in her region. Also with us is Juan Pablo Llobet, Regional Director for Latin America, Syngenta. He joined Syngenta almost 20 years ago and has held global, regional, and territorial positions in this sense. We also have Alejandra Fajardo, Director of Food Value Chain Partnership from Bayer, who has more than 20 years of experience in the agri-food business, institutional affairs. And lastly, Dr. Francisco Melo, who is Director of the Knowledge Management and Regional Cooperation Center at IICA. And before that, he held many important positions in the Brazilian government. So welcome, everyone. It is a pleasure to have you here. And let us begin. I guess first I would like to begin by asking you, as we all know, there are many definitions and expectations of regenerative agriculture, as well as different priorities for different actors involved. So perhaps to start, can you each tell us in just a few sentences what regenerative agriculture means to you and what your top priority is for your regenerative agriculture initiatives? Perhaps we could start with Alejandra. Very well then. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Director, Dr. Lau, all colleagues. For me, it is a great pleasure to be with you today. Regenerative agriculture, that is a tremendous term. We need to produce more with less. regenerative agriculture does more than preserve, and I believe that regenerative, for us, our main priority is to have very clear goals as to sustainability, goals for 2030 to reduce 30% of the greenhouse gases in the countries we work in. And we want to improve the lives and livelihoods of over 6 million of our small rural growers. Our sustainability agenda is very linked to this. We are creating programs for this. Thank you very much, Alejandra. Juan Pablo. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. Greetings to the authorities that are with us, particularly some of the agricultural producers that are with us today. Regenerative agriculture for Syngenta, particularly in tropical regions, as is Brazil or many other areas of our region, means the development and generation of technological innovation that is supplemented by agricultural practices related to many of the things that have already been mentioned to improve soil health and biodiversity. Basically, we seek to bring that support, that science, that innovation to improve those agricultural practices and make the crops that are developed in the region much more resilient to climate change that we are experiencing. A fundamental priority we have is to develop an alternative, a viable alternative for sustainable agriculture, and that can produce at a global scale in order to face all the challenges in food security we have internally through sustainable agriculture. We understand that regenerative agriculture based on technology and the possibility to take that technology and practices to the vast majority of producers that are in the region or globally. That is what makes Syngenta be a bridge or an actor fully committed to this type of agriculture worldwide. We fundamentally seek sustainability and to improve prosperity of the farmers that are dedicated to agriculture. Thank you very much. We hear sustainability, economy, scale, balance. Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is Francisco Melo. Thank you for the opportunity to participate in this high-level panel. It is quite a challenge to speak after all these panelists, but I would like to briefly mention that we must focus and identify and implement good agricultural practices to help mitigate the effects not only of climate change, but also of the many ecosystem services we will need after the environment. The production of food stuff could be a big benefit that we have in our productive systems. So I believe the solution we have, our Professor Ratanlel has mentioned the need to identify those good practices and expand their adoption to all farmers and producers we have in our region. Perhaps we should not only think of strengthening the research agenda regarding climate change, but also the perspective of the adaptation of the millions and millions of producers in areas with climate issues. There are so many social policies that could help the producers to strengthen resilience of their agri-food systems.
Thank you very much, Fran. I would now like to give the floor to Ms. Elvia. Good morning to everyone. As you've seen and heard, I am Elvia Maria Monzon. I am a producer from a rural area, the village of Rancho Viejo in Huehuetenango in Guatemala. For me, regenerative agriculture means taking action towards favoring the public and people and trying to take back what has happened before. I understand that it's taking action to give back, to use organic fertilizer to improve the soil, and to have greater productivity in the long term. My priorities are my family, my children, and a way to give my family the best future possible, to regenerate, to have a better production in the long term.
Muchísimas gracias, Elvia. Es un buena arista para pensar.
Thank you, Elvia, for highlighting the generational aspects. I'm sorry, I'm hearing some music. It's really hard to interpret with that. It's really important to remember how could you please tell us about what you're doing to help agriculture, regenerative agriculture progress, and that could help us with that?
Actualmente estamos desarrollando varias iniciativas a nivel, no solo en Brasil.
We're developing several initiatives, not just in Latin America. I'd like to highlight one of those, which is a program that is being developed at Sintra with great care. It's called Reverte, reversing. So it's based on degraded pasture lands to make them productive again. We've increased productive capacity in Brazil, in this case, without the need to use or open any new lands for agricultural use. This program is prepared with different regenerative agriculture techniques, protocol for the production that incorporates seeds, fertilizers, different biologicals. For me, one of the most important points that links to the question and as to how to scale these up and make them sustainable over time is hand in hand with financing, to support this with financial resources. For us, over the course of this program, we've tried to implement it that way, and that has made a difference. Everyone talks about regenerative agriculture, science, technology, but if we cannot find a way to make it accessible, affordable for farmers, and specifically the capacity to finance that technology, to access it in that way, it's quite unlikely that we will be able to scale it up. Our Reverte program offers financing for 10 years for farmers, so it's really a long-term approach. And with that program, we are also trying to ensure the recovery of 1 million hectares of pasture lands in Cerrado, in the northern part of Brazil. And today, by 2030, that's the goal, by 2030. And today, we have about 170,000 hectares already in the process of recovery. Many of these are already being productive once again for soy or corn crops. We are working with 250 farmers, 254 farms actually, and more than 48 farmers in Brazil. So that's just one example of what I've mentioned of bringing that innovation, bringing these agricultural practices, but especially ensuring access of these through financing, through financial resources for farmers, not just in Brazil, but throughout Latin America. Yes, those are ambitious goals, so many hectares, and so important. We've talked about the fact that of adoption. If you don't have the resources, of course, it's impossible to ensure this approach can grow. Obviously, another important point is to be able to prove the impact this type of approach has and to have the data to back that up and to understand where we can invest to expand regenerative agriculture. Francisco, maybe you can share some of that information with us? Of course, sure. We should mention the Live Soils Initiative of the Americas, led by ICA through our DG Manuel Otero, and thanks to Dr. Ratan Lal as well. And it only exists because of the direct participation of the private sector. Here I have to mention Bayer, Syngenta, and PepsiCo that have supported us in this process in the past 3 years. So I have to start by thanking them. I also contribute to the initiative a lot on the technical side because I'm not just prepared for it, but I also have the passion for it. I'm passionate for acting in the area of soil science. And we should say that today we've heard wonderful presentations besides what we've heard also from Juan, that we need to have the technology reach our producers. We have to think that for solid public policies, for multi-pronged approaches, we definitely need a strong scientific foundation, a basis that lets us know that we are investing our valuable resources in technologies that will actually foster and help us in this big fight against climate change. And the initiative in this past year has really focused on that, on finding these for all our regions. So I think we are just a little bit, just a small step from being able to present all the references that we have for the next COP, and that will lead to a wonderful scientific basis that will help all countries in the region having evidence for this and showing the wonderful agricultural practices and how they have a great capacity for carbon sequestration, direct tilling, integrated systems, and others. We are really focused on searching for and creating these evidences for all our farmers. There's a big challenge, of course, of ensuring that these technologies are actually available to our farmers and transferring technology, creating training programs, but also making financial resources available for them. Thank you very much, Fran. That's the fundamental part in the scientific foundations to ensure we can attract financing at a greater scale. Elvia, I'm sure that if you hear these numbers and working with more than 1 million hectares, it's a bit different from the scale you're used to working every day. So we'd like to bring this to your farm if possible. Could you tell us what you and your colleagues are doing in the region to work towards a better? First of all, I have to thank God for giving me the opportunity of being here and being part of this. Thank you for considering me, because years ago I started with a project in Guatemala, and that's where I started working with regenerative agriculture. I started, you could say it was already regenerative, because I started with a lot that was a small lot, just 1 block's worth, as I call it, and I had live barriers and dead barriers established. I introduced organic fertilizer in my plantations, and that came to motivate all my other colleagues, because I'm part of a cooperative of coffee growers. They would ask me, well, why is your lot not drying up when we don't have rain? And I said, well, this is what I do on my lot, and that helps it maintain moisture and humidity when we don't have rain. Besides that, I've also implemented the diversification of crops in my plot. So I had plantain, avocado, lemon trees, and I also prepared composting spots with the same products I had in my own plot. I don't know how to say it, but these help fight off the insects. So I have some products from the same region that help me with that. And for my plants, I've also been applying that to ensure all my food is very healthy. In the same plot, I have a bit of water. So I have two small ponds that gather water. I have fish there, and I use that same water downstream. I also have my own small family orchard where I have cucumber, cilantro, anything for my own family as well, radishes. Recently, on May 28th, with other colleagues, other women farmers, we've established a laying hen coop with 300 hens. And we're collecting now 10 egg cartons per day. That's not just for our family consumption, but also for people in the area. And with the waste, the droppings of the hens, we're also using it to prepare fertilizer. We also add a coffee pulp to that and green leaves and others of the region are participating. And it's also with molasses, and I use those same products for my own orchard, but also for the rest of the plants that I have in my land. I know that this is a way of helping myself economically. I can sell that, and it helps me. And I also give an example to my other colleague farmers, and they see that it is worth it. It is worth it to give back to our soils what they give us, because they will continue providing for us as long as we also give them organic matter. And that's a result in a long term, maybe, but it's healthier overall. And if we apply, it's much better than applying products that give you results quickly, but that are not healthy for us or our soil. And they might even be more expensive. And in the end, it costs more overall. So it's better to work on this type of agriculture that regenerates soils, that give us the hope of being sustainable soils, to move on and continue for the generations to come, those that are coming after us. So that's my answer. Wonderful. Thank you, Ms. Elvia. It's so important to
Very
understand the scope
interesting,
of the
Elvia, to see the different practices and to see how you are receiving economic assistance while you are improving soil health. Alexander, the regenerative route we know is to basically must bring a greater connection
and ecosystems
among the microbes in soil or livestock or
cattle,
production systems and human beings. Could you talk to us?
Could you tell us about the relationships that you've seen through your work in regenerative agriculture? What are you trying to repair, especially the social aspects you would highlight? Well, we have a global initiative for working with carbon in the US, Asia, Europe, and here in Brazil and Argentina, we have a low carbon program. It's very similar to the pillars that we've already discussed. It's very much aligned to the pillars of the Living Soils of America program. In our program, Pro Carbono, we have over 2,000 farmers with more than 300,000 hectares. And we also invest, we provide training for the farmers for 3 years for free, and they can choose among 70 external consultants. These consultants do not sell their products. They recommend good agricultural practices. So farmers select from the list who they want to work with, and they don't necessarily, if they say I don't have an agricultural coverage program or product, then they will recommend the product, but then also rotating the crops. And so it's very much focused on good agricultural practices. Besides that, we also look at the importance of research, as Francisco mentioned. We are 14 members of investigative units with Embrapa, several companies that participate in this project. So all informational data collected, over 400,000 samples, they all go to that structure, that research structure, so that we can work on those data and use them for Brazil and Argentina, who are the main pilot projects. Besides that, we only reach that if we can do it with digital agriculture. How can we have so much information and collect the data? And we provide it to the research organizations, and all this is done through digital agriculture. The only barrier of entry for this program for farmers is that they have to be in compliance with all legislation, that be it environmental, social, etc. in Brazil. So you cannot be in trouble with the law in any way. Obviously, all this promotes health, overall health of the whole system, biodiversity, better health, and better productivity for all our farmers. By accumulating carbon in their soils, there's also the possibility of improving roots and ensuring that roots provide better health to the plant and to really see better productivity. So we've seen an increase in productivity linked to this program. And we also, and we've heard very well on small farmers and the importance they have and the difference there. The carbon analysis in the area, in Brazil at least, is expensive. In Argentina, it might be not so expensive, but it is. So people cannot really afford to pay so much more for carbon. Many times you have a voluntary market and you have $5 or $10. They don't really pay for what we're working on. So we're bringing in two new technologies to assess the health of the carbon soil. So it's making it cheaper to analyze soil, and it's also using the results for other matters. So with all this, again, what have we seen in terms of results? We've calculated how the crops are working, comparing them to worldwide data, Brazil data that do not necessarily take into account what they're doing in that specific area and place, and comparing them with this type of agriculture. And we found the very best and the very worst. So we removed the very worst and the very best, and working with the real average to give us the real possibilities. So we found 71% increase in soy for the compared to the data we had for comparison. So this means that it is possible to implement, and it is possible to improve that production. And there's the possibility, and we heard from our colleague from Syngenta, we have the possibility, but again, if you don't really have a mechanism to provide financial support for this to really become to be prolonged over time, then it's not necessarily going to be leading to the good practice, and it won't be sustained. So I think that the work we do is trying to prove all the results, everything that is, of course, very important to ensure everything they will gain by using this, to ensure that this becomes sustainable, that it is used and it remains in use for a long time. We have managed to have low carbon soy in several areas, but we have to ensure that this stays on forever. So green financing, we also have a plan, an ABC plan to finance this. We need more resources to ensure that this can reach more farmers and that this becomes a technology for the long term.
Thank you, Alejandra. This is a very important point on the need to ensure that mitigation, aside from producing global benefits, can also provide the co-benefits of resilience, productivity, efficiency, cost reduction. Otherwise, it will not be sustainable over time. Correct. And there's a big difference in working on mitigation in the agriculture as compared to other sectors. And that approach of giving them the option is very interesting. For them to decide who will advise them, because without that trust and communication, we will be unable to implement this at the right rate. You talked about some relationships that could help accelerate actions that can help us work at a greater scale. The time window we have, we know, for people, crops, and everything is limited. The impact, the climate changes are having greater impacts than before. How can we ensure that what we are doing in regeneration can truly transform the environment and help the agri-food systems to become an ever more important part of the solution? Perhaps that would be the question on the metrics and how we are truly demonstrating through data the impact on the different lines, both economic, social, and environment. Juan Pablo, could you refer a bit to what you are doing at Syngenta? Well, going back to the same point is how to ensure this is truly viable. We believe that collaboration is fundamental in this. It is very difficult for an actor on his or her own really get this moving at the scale we need. As a result of this need for collaboration is that we are partners of ICA precisely because of that. And within that context of the Living Soils of the Americas, there is a program called Live and Grow, basically a program where we are analyzing and concretely measuring through external scientists to see how modern agriculture is having an impact on soil health and on microorganisms that live therein. So there's a whole program. We are working together with the ICA on this. We are currently implementing this in 5 countries, following exactly the same protocol in all 5 countries, measuring 52 parameters, clearly defined, very objectively defined, to analyze and identify the impact and the metrics that we are talking about, where we are having an effect and where are we not. So as to final and scientific metrics, these are very sophisticated protocols. As I said, 52 points are being measured over the years. The intermediate metrics and the final metrics, with them, we will see how to translate that into practices and technologies that will allow to increase productivity and the capacity of soils to be regenerated and establish a process that is ever more sustainable. And the final metrics, at least for me, will be the one where Elvia will define in her plot in Guatemala how all this technology is helping her maintain her family, the health of soils that she is working on, and all of this in the end, we will do so that producers like Elvia have the trust, the tools to address the challenges that that can become a solution to many of the other problems we are facing globally. So the intermediate metrics, we can define as many as we want, technology-based, scientific, we depend on that. But the final metrics will be the ones that Elvia will tell us if we're doing a good job on them or not. Thank you. That reminds me that someone that said we could achieve the metrics but lose the point. So I like that. Having the metrics with good scientific support, but talking to farmers and producers and understand what they need to know to have the trust and invest. Alessandra, could you tell us a bit about your approach there? Yes. I would like to talk about 2 points, 2 in particular. I very much like what Marcelo Brito mentions about the 3 Fs: food, force, and well, okay, we have to have we need to have those 3 Fs. We need to protect the forest. We need to have financing. And everything work on in this line is very much focused on those partnerships, on the collaboration and the joint work with external partners that can bring that expertise on science, on finance, on partnerships like INBAN, the Amazon Research Center. And I very much believe in those 3 Fs. We still have one more challenge in the Pro Carbono program. So we are investing in large-scale programs to oversee the methodologies that are being used today. We need to tropicalize these methodologies so they can be better adapted in the countries that are south of the equator. For example, we have conservation practices. Brazil has 80% adoption of direct seeding. And with that, the voluntary markets, that is something that the markets do not necessarily consider. So if we do not tropicalize the best practices and methodologies, we should see a carbon fertilizer in the soil that is not being measured. Then we would be rewarding the bad guys, not necessarily the good guys, as to put it mildly. So we are working with all these 14 institutions in Brazil to validate the protocol and have a calculator that will help us develop a methodology that is tropicalized, adapted to the country. So we're investing in that part of science. Otherwise, it is not possible. Because, I mean, what we have right now, we can implement everything, but producers and farmers will not necessarily adopt them or implement them. So that is why part of the solution is to talk on the holistic part of the 3 Fs, but adapted to the realities of the countries. Thank you very much, Alessandra. The partnerships is fundamental, working together, building together with the different expertise that exists in order to address this challenge. Okay, we are running out of time, but I would like to offer the floor last time for Elvia for her to tell us about what she and her fellow farmers need to support them to take stronger steps towards a more regenerative agriculture. Well, first of all, that we be taken into account as small producers in the rural area, in the region. I believe that what would come to strengthen the farmers would be an integral project that can do financing to follow our work, because we are the ones that least have access to financing. I heard mention a trust fund, but we only hear about this. We don't get any of that. This is financing at a very good interest rate. But in the market, for example, well, they have the banks, but their interest rate is way too high. We would be working like crazy just to pay off the interest. What would really strengthen us to continue to improve, to take stronger steps, is finding at a low interest rate, and that our products can be marketed at better prices. Because, for example, I am a coffee producer, and I always say that I am not the one that sets the price of my product. Other people say, okay, we will pay you X amount. And they do not value all the efforts we make day by day. I do this not because I want a certification or an award. No, wholeheartedly, I want better soils for future generations, because perhaps I am about on my way out. My grandfather basically grew corn, and he taught us to dance in the cornfield around the corn stalks, and it was beautiful. That has been lost. I do want to regenerate my land, and thus be a woman that can truly see the outcomes in the future. In production, I see that production does not drop, but we make a big effort, and we need that we get a push, not for it to be given to us for free, no, that we be taken into account as beneficiaries of those funds that can help us to improve our soils, because I believe that we are doing a lot. And I always tell my fellow partners, let us plant trees, because trees are the ones that bring the rain, they bring the shade, they bring us fresh air. So we need to work very hard on that. We do not have to bare our land. No, we have to seek strategies to improve our soils. So that is my request, I guess, that we be taken into account as small producers.
Thank you very much, Elvia. Thanks to all our panelists for this wonderful conversation. We have to remember to make the best use of every opportunity we can to communicate the challenges, the realities of the sector, and what efforts are ongoing and what we wish to continue doing and are doing today. Today, it's been clear that there's an urgency to continue progressing with the regenerative approach. And the most important question now is how to do it, how to keep progressing with this regeneration, what type of support we need, and how do we ensure that everything we do helps us reach the necessary outcomes. As we heard from Dr. Borlaug, pessimism has no place in action, and hearing from his specific steps on how to create alliances, improve actions, and this really helps us foster some hope for a challenging environment worldwide. Obviously, the basis of food systems are farmers themselves that face several challenges daily while trying to move forward. The public sector, helping to create the enabling conditions, is key. And the private sector is also essential to ensure we can scale up and have the necessary innovation and technical cooperation to facilitate investment and build capacities. I think we can continue talking about this more profoundly, looking at the different initiatives, and that discussion has to continue. For those who are going to COP28 on climate change in Dubai, we invite you to continue discussing in the pavilion of Sustainable Agriculture of the Americas. As we heard from our DG, ICA is fostering this along with other partners. There we will have over 40 events in the 2 weeks of the COP. So it's a collective space for the whole sector to make your actions visible and to continue discussing what we should do to ensure we can take necessary action at the scale and rhythm necessary. So we invite you and encourage you all to participate. With that, I close the session. Thank you all very much. And thank you to the panelists, especially for sharing your ideas. Thank you. Thank you.
Recording stopped.